Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this press conference. My name is Marie-Ève Néron. I'm the Senior Director, Policy and Engagement at the Programs Directorate with the Climate Change Branch at Environment and Climate Change Canada. Today, I will be your MC. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. Je tiens d'abord à souligner que les terres sur lesquelles nous sommes aujourd'hui font partie du territoire traditionnel non cédé du peuple Anishinaabe algonquin. I would also like to thank all of you for taking the time for being here today. Je tiens aussi à vous remercier d'avoir pris le temps d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. Now I'm pleased to invite the Honorable Steven Guilbeault, Minister of Environment and Climate Change Canada, to deliver his remarks. Maintenant, il me fait plaisir d'inviter l'honorable ministre Steven Guilbeault, ministre de l'Environnement et Changement climatique, à prendre la parole.
Merci beaucoup, Marie-Ève. Bonjour tout le monde. Hello, everyone. I am pleased to join representatives today from the Peavine Metis Settlement in Alberta and the Tl'etinqox government in British Columbia. I would also like to recognize that we have with us today representatives from 3 national Indigenous organizations whose work is helping us drive climate action in Canada. We have representatives from the Inuit Tl'etinqox, the Métis National Council, as well as the Assembly of First Nations, which has just recently released its national climate change strategy. Congratulations. I'm joining you today from Montreal in Quebec, which is the traditional and unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka or Mohawk Nation, a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst nations. Pour le gouvernement du Canada, les communautés des Premières Nations, des Inuits et des Métis sont des leaders et des partenaires indispensables dans l'action climatique. We have much to learn from the ambitious climate action Indigenous communities are taking across Canada. You are blazing the trail for the energy transition. Right now, Indigenous communities support the production of a significant part of Canada's renewable energy. First Nation, Métis, and Inuit entities are partners or beneficiaries in nearly 20% of Canada's electricity infrastructure. And renewable energy projects on traditional Indigenous territory more than quadrupled from 2009 to 2020. Everything from large hydroelectricity partnerships, such as the Romaine Complex in Quebec or the Peavine River Hydro in British Columbia, from hundreds of solar, wind, and geothermal Indigenous-led initiatives, like Six Nations of the Grand River in Ontario, for instance. Six Nations has been investing in large-scale solar and wind projects in and around their territory, including a massive 77-turbine wind farm on the Niagara Escarpment. And they have become a national clean energy leader in both Indigenous and non-Indigenous sectors. That is impressive. But there are so many other commendable projects of all sizes happening across the country, including in northern Indigenous communities. These projects are not just good for the environment. They also provide reliable and affordable energy that is not tied to volatile global oil and gas prices. The Tl'etinqox Nation in Yukon, for example, is using waste wood from their lumber mill to produce biomass fuel, which is now heating homes at a lower cost in their community. These are stories of leadership and innovation. And they're even more remarkable considering that many Indigenous communities still face serious obstacles to moving away from diesel. So the Government of Canada is delighted to be part of your work as an effective partner. That's why we launched a Low Carbon Economy Challenge with an Indigenous pilot stream a few years ago. We want to support Indigenous agency to reduce emissions, recognizing the unique rights, interests, and circumstances of Indigenous governments and organizations. Today, I'm pleased to announce 2 projects that we are supporting from last year's application process. The Peavine Metis Settlement is receiving up to $8.5 million to support a solar photovoltaic system, which will offset a good portion of the community's electricity needs. The Tl'etinqox community is receiving over $1.8 million to install a biomass heating system that will displace all of the propane used in 8 community buildings, a church, and a healing center. We thank you and your communities for your important work. This is a decisive decade in climate action, and we have a common purpose. We want a sustainable, livable planet for future generations. And I know we will continue to see exciting Indigenous-led initiatives happening across Canada, so you can count on our support. Which brings me to my last announcement. Today, we're also happy to announce the launch of a new call for proposals under the Indigenous Leadership Fund. This is a new program under the Low Carbon Economy Fund that was developed with Métis, Inuit, and First Nation representatives in collaboration with Indigenous clean energy experts. It will provide up to $180 million by 2029 to support Indigenous projects in renewable energy, energy efficiency, and low carbon heating. It is divided into three main streams: First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. The Métis and Inuit funding is already being delivered through a direct intake process. And I'm glad to announce that the call for applications for the First Nation stream is now open. Project proposal will be accepted until March 31st, 2027. I encourage all First Nations governments, communities, and organizations to apply. Aujourd'hui, nous annonçons donc le lancement d'un autre appel de proposition dans le cadre du Fonds de leadership autochtone. Le fonds va investir jusqu'à 180 millions de dollars d'ici 2029 dans des projets d'énergie renouvelable, d'efficacité énergétique et de chauffage à faible émission de carbone. Les volets de financement pour les Inuits et les Métis sont déjà en cours. Et aujourd'hui, j'annonce que l'appel de proposition pour le volet des Premières Nations est ouvert, et ce jusqu'au 31 mars 2027. J'invite tous les gouvernements, les communautés et les organisations des Premières Nations à y participer. On veut voir de plus en plus d'histoires à succès émerger du savoir et du leadership autochtone. Let's continue working together and making strides toward a sustainable future. Nihawe, thank you, merci.
Thank you, Minister Guilbeault. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre. At this time, I would like to invite Jeff Thrasher, General Manager of the Evergreen Bioheat Limited and representing the Tl'etinqox Community Bioheat Project in BC, to speak.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the introduction, Marie. My name is Jeff Thrasher. I am the General Manager for Evergreen Bioheat, and I'm here today to tell you about a project in the community of the Tl'etinqox Nation. It is 100 kilometers west of Williams Lake, British Columbia, on Highway 420, and it is a beautiful part of Canada. Like all of Canada, it is beautiful. The community there, we have installed a wood chip biomass boiler system, and it will reduce GHG emissions and create community jobs in this Indigenous community. We have installed 2 biomass boilers there called Hargasner Eco HKs for a total of 500 kilowatts of heating. Now, these heating boilers will run through a series of heat exchangers and insulated underground piping to the Tl'etinqox School, the Adult Education Center, and there are 5 teachers' residences that were also added into this. In addition to these 7 buildings, we've added on a beautiful logwood church that is in the community that is also heated by propane. And by doing this project with the Tl'etinqox community, we have reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 114 tons, and the economic benefits and savings to the school are in the neighborhood of potentially $85,000 per year to their annual operating budget. Now, this project, as quick as I am talking here, it came about after a few years of planning with Chief Joe Alphonse and the ECC office, and of course the Low Carbon Economy Fund, which we cannot thank enough for its contribution to this, as this community is now heating with biomass. And we are, in fact, these 8 buildings are under heat right now. So at the end of the year, we will be able to prove that this system has been successful in lowering emissions in Canada. And I just would like to take time to thank everybody for allowing me to be here and do a quick synopsis on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. And now I would like to invite Greg Gauchier he's the chairman of the Peavine Metis Settlement, to speak.
Good morning, Tansit. I'd like to first introduce myself. I'm Greg Gauchier. I'm the current chair of Peavine Metis Settlement. I'm hoping you can hear me. I'm in an airport at the moment, so please excuse the background noise. We're proud to partnership today, and in the last few years, actually, with Canada, with our shared goal of 0 emissions by the year 2050. I think it's a great shared goal by both of my community and others and Canada. Very proud to be part of that. We would like to announce that the solar farm that we are contemplating will offset the majority of the needs of the Peavine community, including 200 homes, over 200 homes. All the Peavine community-owned businesses or buildings, rather. And in fact, we will nearly achieve net zero with just this project alone. So we're very, very excited. The Peavine Metis Settlement solar project dates back to the concept in 2017. We did a couple of smaller solar farms or solar arrays, I should say, one that powers our arena to a degree and one that powers our water treatment plant to a degree. We partnered with a company called OGI, Optima Global, and they have championed this project for us, these projects for us. The first guy that we dealt with OGI was a fellow named Juan Pfeiffer. He did the initial project with the solar farm that is powering our arena. And then he was joined by John, Alejandro, and Caroline, the other part of the team of OGI, and they've done a pre-feasibility study for us. They did the pre-feasibility study, in fact. They've helped us do a second array for our water treatment plant. And those projects date back, like I say, to 2017, 2018, and to 2019 and 2020 is when they were all completed. We are proud to be now beyond our feasibility study and into the building phase with the support of the Indigenous Leadership Fund, or ILF. We were called a couple of years ago, and we followed up with the ILF. As I understand it, we're one of the first that has a project like this, so it's very exciting for us. It was a long road, and you need a champion to make these things happen. So we're proud to have championed these projects, and we're proud to find a champion in the current Minister of Canada, who also supports Indigenous-led projects and owned projects. So very, very happy to be a part of that process and that leadership that he's providing for us. Like I say, a shared vision of zero net emissions by 2050. Very, very happy to be a part of that. Even though it's a small part, we plan on doing more projects in the future to continue our march towards net zero by 2050. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank OGI, John, Juan, Alejandro, and Caroline, but also like to thank our champions back home who have marched this project forward for quite some time now. Lance Gauchier, Lynn Smith, Jamie Marin, Lance Gauchier, and Andy Gauchier, who's our current project manager. I also like to thank all the past councillors who initiated these projects several years ago. And like I say, I was part of that process as administrator and now as a chairman. So I'm glad that I'm very proud that I get to see this project and these projects not only develop, but actually get to see the very end result of it. So with that, thank you very much, and very happy to be here today.
Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you, everyone. This was very inspiring and informative. This concludes the formal portion of this announcement. We will now begin a media Q&A with Samantha Bayard. Merci à tous, c'était très inspirant et instructif. Ceci conclut la partie officielle de cette annonce. Nous allons maintenant débuter la session de période de questions avec Samantha Bayard.
Hello, everyone. Nous prenons maintenant des questions de la part de journalistes qui sur Zoom. Veuillez utiliser la fonction main levée si vous avez une question. Nous vous demandons de vous en tenir à une question et à une question de suivi. We will now be taking questions from reporters on Zoom. Please use the hand raising function if you have a question. We ask you to keep it to one question and one follow-up only. If you're calling in from telephone, please use the following commands will be entered using your phone's dial pad. Star 6, toggle mute, unmute. Star 9, raise your hand. Les combinaisons de touches suivantes peuvent être utilisées sur notre clavier de numérotation. Étoile 6, couper, rétablir le son. Étoile 9, lever les mains. Okay. We will now move ahead with the question periods. Mia Rapson with Canadian Press, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm wondering, Minister Guilbeault, if you could explain what you were saying to senators that you've been talking to about Bill C-234 and how many senators you've been speaking to about it.
Thank you very much, Mia. A couple of things on that. First and foremost, people should remember, and if Pierre Poilievre had any sense of moral decency, he would admit that we've already excluded 97% of fuels used on farms, because at the time when we put in place carbon pricing in Canada, the price on pollution, we realized that there was no alternatives for these applications. So the price on pollution in the agricultural sector only applies to 3% of fuels that are being used, where alternative technologies are available, and we've in the case of grain drying, for example, and we've provided more than $500 million of funding to support farmers in that transition. Number one. Number two, we're against the creation of a new exemption. We were against Bill C-234 when it was in the House of Commons. We voted against it. So I have had conversations with, I don't know, maybe half a dozen, give or take, senators in the course of the last 2 weeks. But people should remember that since 2015, there are a handful, but only a handful of Liberal senators. The senators we've nominated as a government since 2015 are independent senators. The only person who tells senators what to do and how to vote is Pierre Poilievre. We don't do that. So I've had conversations with some of them to explain our position and why we don't support that bill. But this is what they've been. They've been conversations.
The Senate last week voted down some amendments that I think would have reduced the scope of that legislation. And now, I guess the final thing is the third vote. What will the government do if that bill passes? You're against further exemptions, but if that bill passes, this would be a new exemption, right? So what would you do if that happens?
We'll see what the Senate decides, and then we'll need to make our own decision as to how we act once the final decision by the Senate has been made, which hasn't been the case.
Pardon me, we'll continue to the next question. Davis Legree, iPolitics, go ahead.
Hi, thanks very much. I just wanted to kind of stay on that point of Bill C-234. Mr. Guilbeault, you said you had conversations with 6 senators just to present your position. I was wondering if you could maybe explain or tell us if they were receptive to your position and perhaps what end result you expect for the bill when the Senate comes back after the break week.
I said roughly 6. I don't have the list in front of me, but so 6 is probably not the exact number. As I said to your colleague Mia, I explained to them that the reasons why we don't support the bill C-34, and I hope that was in the context of the amendments that were being proposed, and the senators that I have spoken to were in favor of those amendments. So it was more of a conversation than a lobbying effort on my part. And I was asking them if they needed more information from my office as to the reasons why we don't like this bill. But it was really the nature of those conversations.
Thanks very much. And then switching gears, we're a couple of weeks out from COP28. I was just wondering if perhaps you could kind of walk us through your schedule for the next 2 weeks in the lead up to that event.
Yes. So as co-facilitator in collaboration with Egypt, we've already met with probably between, I'd say, 70 and 80 different countries to talk about a number of the elements that will be discussed at COP28 on behalf of the COP28 president. The Prime Minister and I also spent a fair bit of time during the CARICOM meeting in Ottawa 3 weeks ago, talking with leaders of the Caribbeans about climate change, about COP28, about different elements of the negotiations. I've had follow-up conversations with some of them. We had last week a meeting with international civil society organizations, trade unions, environmental organizations, youth, to get their perspective as well. We will be having next week some further meetings with the COP presidency and some of our peers, other co-facilitators. And I will be heading to Dubai, if I remember correctly, on the 28th. Should point it out that we will have. Canada has a very diverse and open delegation to COP in general, not just COP28, but it will probably be the most diverse in Dubai. We're one of the handful of countries in the world that accredit civil society organizations as part of the delegation, environmental organizations, youth, indigenous youth, trade unions, representative from private sector organizations, municipalities, provinces and territories. It will likely be the largest delegation in the history of country because of provincial participation, which ranks in the hundreds from Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, British Columbia, Quebec, and many others.
Please raise your hand if you have a question. Please raise your hand if you have a follow-up question. I saw one reporter drop their hand, so please put it back up if you'd like to speak. Veuillez utiliser la fonction main levée si vous avez une question. Okay. I believe il n'y a plus de questions en ligne. Ceci qui conclut la conférence de presse aujourd'hui. Merci pour votre participation. There are no more questions online. This concludes today's event. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Samantha. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Samantha.